It's great to see so many young people here. So who's a player? Okay, who's a coach? And coach and a parent? Good. And out of those players, who wants to be a professional player? Okay, good. We all have those aspirations. Okay, I think this is a really important topic, the parenting the youth footballer. And I think it's parenting in any sport. It's a difficult process. And it's one that we have to really work on hard, because any weekend we could sit here together as a group and watch some things and sort of not really be that comfortable with what we see. Who's ever been at a ground or a game and thought, ooh, I don't really like what I see? Has anyone been in that situation? Yeah, good. I was saying to Peter this morning that I was at a game the other week, and I was trying to get video of these parents, what they were doing, so I could actually see it and use it in this presentation. But I thought, that's a bit dodgy. They don't really know that I'm doing that. And I don't know, there must be some privacy laws about me just doing that. But anyway, let's move on. We've also seen this sort of face, and this actually comes from a video, and I'll get you to have a look at it at some stage. It's from the FA, and they did this video about, you know, the ugly parent, I suppose, or the ugly coach, and the you know, the disrespect that they show, I suppose, the referee and also the players. And this is a real problem, okay, where we've come from, and we've all probably experienced it. And some of us might have experienced it as a child as well. And if you can reflect back to the parents in the audience or the coaches, what it was like during some of your times when you've had that experience way back when you had that coach, or it might have even been your parent or a grandparent or someone else's parent where you saw them. We've all got those stories. And the problem about it is, it's just not now. Okay? It just doesn't affect now. There's a hell of a lot of research out there to show that what happens during this little period of time with the children can have long-term effects. Long-term effects. And you only have to read some of the stories of some of our great athletes. You know, like Andre Agassi, go and read his book. What do you think his relationship is like with his father? Or Jelena Dokic, what do you think that relationship was like? And I'm sure none of us in this room, or none of us anywhere around, really want to be in that situation. And I think there's probably 100 people here tonight. If you can go and touch a couple of other people, and then we expand this and we start to make a real difference, I think it's going to be a really positive impact on our football community and our wider community.
How much abuse do you have to put up with each week? You know, people shouting at you.
Get out there and do it!
Having a pop.
You ain't got no commitment, son!
Swearing and that.
I am bloody sick of it!
What, none?
You ain't showing pride!
That's because you wouldn't put up with it, would you?
You let yourself, Dad!
I mean, people like you and me, we wouldn't stand for it, would we?
You let the team, Dad!
But then,
You let me, Dad!
we're not kids, are we?
This is the last time! The last time! Look at me!
Did you know
You don't want it enough!
over half our young footballers
Now you get out there and you fight for the ball!
have to put up with pressure
Go on, make me proud!
and abuse
You ain't got nothing, son!
from their elders
Why don't you just grow up?
and betters? And it's time we gave it a rest.
Always and in every survey ever done, every piece of research, there's one reason kids play sport, and it's fun. Number one reason, every single time, it's about fun. And you know what the number one reason is that they stop playing? It's not fun. And it's really not fun. It's not winning. It's not about, I want to be a professional player. No one starts that thinking, I want to be a professional player. But somewhere along the line, we think that they might want to be a professional player. Never ever forget this. If you walk out of here with nothing today, that's the reason the kids in front of you, if you're a coach, are playing. If you're a player, that's why your mates that mightn't be as good as you are playing. And what are you doing to them? And if you're a parent, the next time you think about it, why is your kid actually playing? Because it's fun. But I don't know if it is that much fun anymore. I had a fascinating conversation with my son, and he said to me, and he's been through the system, the football system, and he's 18 now. And he took a year off for the HSC. And he said to me, after all those years, and he's been at good clubs where I think they've done the right thing, and it's been, I think, a positive experience. But you know what? What really got me is he said, Dad, you know when I last really enjoyed my football? I said, when was that? And he said, in the under 9s and 10s. I thought that was pretty good because I was a coach. But what it was even though he'd played this representative football all these years, it was under 9s and 10s that he really enjoyed that. And I'm a product of this as well. I was 16, been in all the state teams going through. 16, missed out on a national team that used to be the under 19s team then. I was a goalkeeper. All I could dream of was not making a mistake. It wasn't fun. My parents didn't push me, but I wasn't having fun. So somewhere along the line, there's some circuit breaking. And what we're about is really, we want to create lifelong footballers. What's exciting now is there's even walk football. Has anyone seen that? Has anyone seen walk football? So you can play till you're 85 if you want. You know, I know a lot of people play running football that look like they're playing walk football, but we can play. Now there was over 35s, there was over 45s, I don't know if there's over 55s, but you know, that's what we want to create, this relationship. So let's get back to why are the kids playing? We've become somehow along the line thinking that being a professional athlete is the king of all jobs. And for someone that's been around professional sport for many, many years, I can absolutely tell you it's not. And then I think, really, what is actually making it? What are we actually aiming for? Is this the be-all and end-all of life? I'll never forget a number of years ago, I got a phone call, random phone call. I don't normally pick up random numbers, but I must have been doing it that day, and I picked it up. The person said, hey, Dr. Duncan. I said, yes. And he said, I got your number, and I want you to do one-on-one training with my child. I said, I don't really do that because I'm expensive and I'm not worth it. It's not worth it for you to have me come and train your child one-on-one. And he said, how much? And I said, well, at the minimum that hour is going to be, because I've got to drive there, I've got to do this. I kept saying, I don't want to do it. I can't do it. I'm happy to offer advice. You don't need me. You don't need me. And he said, money is no object. I said, why? And he said, because my son is my superannuation. Now, this is not an urban myth. This is something I heard with one ear, and the first thought that went through my mind was, holy goodness. And then the second thought was, what's the number of docs? Because I should be calling them. But this guy was very, very serious. And then the conversation that I continued having was, I said, by the way, how old's your son? And he said, he's 8. Now, I know the vast number of us are not like that, but we can be. And you probably right this moment know someone like that, or know someone that's thinking like that. And we've got to get back to the purpose. I'm all about setting values, mission statements, vision statements, and I don't care what age it is at. You know, I've got this big thing about self-science, about you become an expert at you. And you kids here, you want to be a player, you start taking responsibility. You can start working towards that, writing down what your values are, what you're here for, and what your goals are going to be. They're your goals. You own them. And if you're a parent, I would encourage your kids to take ownership of that. They're not our goals. Just because we didn't play for Australia, We're not going to be better off if our kids play for Australia. I see it all the time, people fronting around because their kid's playing for the Wanderers Academy. Like it's something about them. Well, buddy, it's got nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with you. It's your kid. And let your kid be a kid. But what is your purpose? You guys, you want to be a professional player. It doesn't happen over there. It just doesn't happen. You've got to have that drive. It has to come from you. It can't come from your parents and it can't come from your coach. Okay, so I'm very much about what is the purpose of what we're actually doing. We talked about having fun. And that's what, sport's just a vehicle for life, right? It's not the be-all and end-all of life. So I think if we can reflect on why we're here, it will really start to help in this whole bigger picture of football parenting. Because what do we want? Great players or great people? They're not exclusive. I've worked with some great players that are great people. Sadly, I've also worked with great players that I'm very concerned about when they're not a player. What is actually going to happen? And I think we actually set our kids up very early on for this to happen. We all talk, we all see it, the depression related to when people retire, the depression related to injury and that they didn't make it. Do you know the relationship between representing Australia at under 17 level and actually representing Australia at Socceroo level? You know what it is? It's actually you're better off not playing for Australia at under 17 level. The statistics show you got more of a chance of playing for the Socceroos. So what happens? Because the kid starts to identify themselves as a football player. That's their identity. Or a swimmer, or a rugby league player, or whatever it is. That's how they identify themselves. And when it goes away, what is left? And that's maybe what we're doing. We're setting our kids up, setting our youth footballers up, our young professionals up for a completely miserable life. Because their identity is locked in this. And then if injury takes it away, or they actually just stop enjoying it and don't want to play anymore, it's very hard to do because they're so used to going everywhere where it's X the footballer. Where really what we want is X the person, the great person. Doesn't matter what they do. So I think about this a lot. There is no doubt that I think everyone deep down wants their child to be a great person and to live a very good life. But somewhere, some circuitry just goes wrong when it comes to sport. And we start to think that we want this sporting achievement. And we become competitive rather than collaborative, maybe with other people, other parents. Because it's very much, it's a long game, right? This parenting thing. It's a long game, you guys wanting to be a player as well. It's about doing the things right. It's about coaches. Do you know, as a coach, what wonderful opportunity that is to impact a young person's life? There is no greater opportunity than that. And I think sometimes we miss that we've got that opportunity. Like, this is a great opportunity for me to speak to you. The other day I was very lucky. I got to speak at a school on Are You OK Day. They're great opportunities if some person can go away. But a coach has these kids in front of them. And I think we can all remember a great coach that we had or a great teacher. And a coach is just a teacher. It's not about the results. It's about the impact you have on their life. And it's a long game. You as a parent too. It's a long game, right? We have kids under our control for a fair period of time. But soon these little ones here, not little, sorry guys, but you know, they're going to be 18 and they start to drive by themselves. And then they're 19 and 20. And then you'll find that maybe they don't want to be at home because everything they do is not good enough. Or the relationship that they had in sport. There's a couple of players that I know that have played for Australia that I've had a lot to do with that now do not, and I've known them since they were 15, 16, will not speak to their parents. Because they were able to break away. They were able to transfer somewhere else to create this distance from their parents. I remember having a conversation with one saying, hang on, your kid is now a professional player, leave him in our care. Stay away. And I've seen that infiltrate through this player's life. So it happens a lot. And it happens, and this long game, I think we'd all like to be in the situation where when we don't have much time to live, our kids are by our bed and telling us that we lived a very good life and that we looked after them. Or if you're a coach, you know that people are there saying, wow, you had a great impact on my life. So I think that's what we want. But again, we've just got to work hard at it. And I think it comes back to self-awareness. My whole framework around self-science is this focus that I think as a society, we've started to lose touch with silence. Reflection. And that book that Pete introduced at the back, there's not a lot of writing in it because it's actually a journal. But the reason we did that, I actually wrote it with a friend for ourselves because it was about reflecting on each day and not letting any day go past. And I think when I see parents acting up or coaches screaming at a 15-year-old referee or a player screaming at his mate because he's not good enough, I wonder, is there time that they actually step back and go, I stuffed up today? That's my hope. We all make mistakes. But do we have that reflective process to actually go, I can do this better? And that's where this self-awareness comes in. And we don't like silence. We race around, we're busy, you know. I think we should embrace technology rather than think it's the devil. You know, I think there's nothing wrong with the power that we have in a phone these days. Do you know, in actual fact, there's more power in that phone than Ronald Reagan had when he was running the United States as president in his computers? That can only be a good thing. We need to learn how to live with that and still have this time to be self-aware. Gets right back to knowing thyself. Knowing what and where you're at, sticking to those goals about, okay, my overall goal is I want to live a good life. I want to have a good relationship with those players, with my kids. And then we've got these environments, what I call the environments of football parenting. The pre-training game. Driving to the game. Parent is the coach. You're going to do this, but you're not the coach. You're the driver. Just drive. Ask your kid how they are, how's school, how's everything going. Be supportive, of course. Make sure they get a good breakfast. We'll talk about that later. But just drive the damn car. So we have that at training, and then we have it at a game with the kid sitting there. He's going through his pre-game routine. He's, you know, Most coaches only give a 5-10 minute talk on game day, but they've already had half an hour talk. It's really bad if you live in Sydney and you're playing against Wollongong. But I don't think we realise just how stressful that can be. I look back with such fond memories that I didn't realise now how lucky I was that I had parents. My mum just drove me to training and we just chatted. My mum drove me home from training. And I was saying today, I remember the under-14s, I didn't make the state team. I cried all the way home. You know, they used to announce it there. It was pretty bad, actually. You know, looking back, got in the car, upset because I identified myself as a state goalkeeper. Now I had to go to school the next day and say, no, I'm not anymore. Well, what am I? But my parents just didn't have much to say. They were just there, wipe up the tears, cook you dinner and get on with it. I didn't realise how lucky I was until I started seeing this as an adult and seeing what actually happens. We've got the sideline. What happens? I don't know. What happens? Think right this moment of someone, maybe it's you, but of someone where you go, what are they doing? I remember I was coaching the under-7s and my son was in, I think my daughter was in it too. It was funny, he was only 4. And for one, I never gave out that Player of the Week trophy. I'm not going to talk about, I might talk a bit about that. We can get onto that. So I removed that. I don't know why they're there, but we'll chat about that. But the thing is, I remember a kid scored a goal and a lady went, ching ching, that's $20. Like, I didn't realize people, I must have been naive, that people would actually do that. Because what does ching ching $20 do to a 6-year-old? You think he's going to pass the ball? Because if he starts passing the ball, you've got to think, oh, he's not too bright, doesn't know how to make money. So why are we doing that? What goes wrong? What is a goal important? What we should see is that they're just having fun. So the sideline can be a big problem. The abuse of referees, I'm sorry, we need to stand up. I live by the fact that if, you know, the standard you walk past, if you let it happen and you do not say anything, you know, well-meaning, then we're part of that. We're part of that. And when I see 15 and 16-year-old kids giving up their time to referee and getting abused by grown men, I think it's horrific. Because imagine if that was on the street. What, we're safe in the grounds of a football place? If that was on the street, the guy would be arrested, right? But we allow that to happen. And that's something we have to stop. That is not right.
Open your eyes! My woman can referee this game, Ben!
Listen to this muppet. Every week he does this, screaming and shouting at the ref.
Ref! Ref! That's a yellow card, ref! Card him! Yellow card him, ref! How are these kids supposed to learn the game if you don't know the game? He's an animal! Give him
Look at him, the ref. But he gives up his Saturday mornings to do this. Now, was it the right decision? It might have been, it might not have been. Who knows? We all make mistakes.
You mug!
Would you take this at work? Nah.
Okay, thank you.
No, don't thank me, thank you!
Just clear the
You're
playing area, please.
You ain't got a clue!
Alright.
Clown!
You see, Dad's trying to live out his own dreams through his son.
Did it! What's the matter with you? That's a suicidal boy!
Now, how's he supposed to learn
Rosie!
if he can't make his own mistakes?
Referee, you're not watching the game, mate! You're watching me! You ain't gonna see nothing here!
It's no wonder we're losing so many refs when we're having to put up with people like Jet the Biscuit here every week.
Come on, Stevie! You're running about like a chicken with no head! Liven it up!
And it's no wonder thousands of kids give up the game either. We carry on like this, we won't have a game left.
Ref! Ref?
Some of us need to take a long, hard look at ourselves.
So post-training game, the drive home. It's been identified as one of the most stressful parts of a young kid's life. The drive home from a sporting event. Because all of a sudden, the parent has switched back from parent to coach, and they're giving the post-game talk. But they're not using video or proper analysis, they're just using the tapes that are going over in their head that they've probably heard from history when they played. And I'm not here to tell anyone how to parent because I've been in that situation. But some of us can be aware enough to go, it's not the time, it's not the time, it's not my job. My job is to drive.
Did you tell the coach to put you aside the game?
Yep.
How many times?
I was standing right next to him.
Are you sure? Because I stood right next to you.
I was by him as many times as I could be.
Dude, you're not getting it done. Let me explain something to you. If you do something wrong, do I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, I correct it. Or I tell you so you can correct it. How do you know what to correct if you don't even know why he pulled you out of the game? What'd I tell you about that? Are you scared of him or something?
No.
So why don't you go ask him? Like right now, you know we're gonna have this conversation after the game. You know it's coming. Okay, this is part of you becoming a young man. If someone does something, you're just gonna take it? So if I was to walk up to you and just slap you inside your face, what are you gonna do? Just turn around and be like, I don't know why that guy did that. It doesn't make any sense, Jay. You act like you're 10 or 9 or 8. Dude, you're just going through the motions. If you're gonna be selfish, you know what? You have other brothers and sisters, okay? We'll take you from out of that school and give them a chance and put them in a private school. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It confuses me. What's the problem?
Every time I come back, like in the car, I always feel like I'm in trouble or I did something wrong.
Well, did you?
Yeah.
You've had more personal training than any of those kids out there. Okay? Back to the drawing board. Back up to getting early, back up inside the morning, okay? Because it doesn't make any sense. You have me driving back and forth from this school, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, for you to go out and do absolutely nothing. I don't understand why you don't get it. I don't understand it.
So these environments we really need to work on. And I suggest if you're a coach, set up that. Set up these. This is what we stand by. This is our philosophy. This is my philosophy as a coach. This is my philosophy as a club. This is how we act. And not just words. I see a lot that have words, but don't live by the words. We need to make that impact. And that's how you choose a club. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's what we need to do. Create that environment that we want to be around. Another environment is this failure and overcoming disappointment. We're moving into that interesting time of year with trials. Who's going for trials? You know, we have that. That was another thing that, as an adult, I found really amusing or upsetting. Because when I played, you represented your local area, right? If you didn't make the team, you played club football. That was it. You didn't then go, I've been cut from here, quick, let's jump in the car, race to this club, and then this club, and then this club on the same day. So Failure is no problem at all. In actual fact, we don't let our kids fail enough. And then what that does is breeds fear of failure. What you want, and even as an adult, is to keep fronting up. And if you get knocked down, you get up again and go again. And I think that's what we need to teach our kids. Kid doesn't make a team. What do? We get in the car and we support them. We wipe away their tears. If they've got tears, it's all okay. It's grief. It's grief. But then we support them as an adult supports a kid. It's not about them as a person. They didn't make this team. There's no excuses. It's not like the coach didn't like you or so-and-so's son, well, he's the president, so he got in before you. It was all written. No, you didn't get in. That's it. Let's move on. But you go through that period of time and you actually support your child. Because I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are. Everyone will have a failure at some stage. Everyone. So if we don't teach our kids how to experience failure, then we're pushing them to have a really difficult life. There's nothing wrong with the disappointment. I was chatting to a kid the other week, and he was playing in a lower NPL division, and he tried out a couple of years for the higher NPL division, and he was saying to me, this year he should make it, but if he doesn't, he's not going to play. I said, but you enjoy playing, right? Oh, I love playing football. So why does it really matter what team you're playing for? Do you get to play every week? Yes. Maybe if you play in upper grade, upper level, you mightn't get to play every week. I don't think we look at that enough. What's the point of playing for a major team if you're actually not going to play? Does it all get back to the parent thinking it's kudos for them? My kids at Sydney FC, or my kids at Wanderers, or my kids at another high-level club. Oh yeah, they only play 2 minutes a week and they're unhappy, but they're there. Praise. Praise is good. False praise is just lying. Be very aware of that. Positive reinforcement is good, but just kids are smart. Kids are smart. You know the kid that gets the student of the week and they're the naughtiest kid in the class? They know they're the naughtiest kid in the class. My kid said to me that in kindergarten. Dad, you know, Joey got student of the week, but he runs around the class and writes on the walls. But it was his turn, Dad. First athletics carnival I went to with my kids when they're in kindergarten, and they're 20 now. Oh, my daughter's 20. I'd never seen a yellow ribbon before. The yellow ribbon for fourth. And now they tell me there's 8th. And then you get a ribbon for just turning up. And then we spend a fortune of our budgets at local clubs on giving a trophy. In 2009, I moved house. I said to the kids, pack up your stuff. You know, they were little. I said, but pack up your stuff, put anything you don't want in a box, and we'll take it down to, you know, charity or whatever, we'll do it. My daughter was, I think she was probably 8. I looked in the box and it was full of trophies. I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "They're just the trophies we got for, just being registered." They know. They know. But we continue doing it. When is a club going to make a stance and go, "You know what? I don't even know how much trophies cost, but those damn trophies, I remember winning national medals, and they're like this little medal, and my kid in the under 7s getting a damn trophy like that." Like, we've gone friggin' insane. But when's a club going to make a stance and go, "You know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to spend that money on really good coaching. We're going to spend that money on getting someone in to talk about, nutrition or something like that. Or coaching. Or some good equipment that we need. Or getting someone from Football New South Wales or someone to direct something to help out. But we're going to make a stance. We're going to make a difference. And if people don't want to play for that and they want to go and that's fine. There's a lot of other places to do that. There's a lot of places we can go and do that. So be careful of praise, because I've even seen this at the highest level become a massive issue. Little you might know, unless you've ever been in a professional dressing room. And I've been very fortunate to be involved in some very stressful games. I mean, maybe the most stressful was when we had to play Honduras to qualify for the World Cup. Syria and then Honduras. There's a lot riding on that. Australia doesn't qualify for the World Cup. It's a pretty big disaster for football. And Honduras, tough destination to go away. We've got a 0-0 result. Come back here. You've got to win. So games like that, they're really, really important. And there's so many of these games. You know what? Win, lose or draw, a lot of the time that happens in a professional change room these days. The first thing the player does, and I've watched this, they come back and look on their phone. They might be looking for what is being said about them in social media. But more than that, win, lose or draw, they're looking for the message from the parents or the family to probably tell them that they did all right even though they didn't. There's some teams I consult to now where we ban the phones, not for that reason, or actually for that reason, because what we want them to do is come in. You've just played this game with these people, and if you've lost, come back into that dressing room and have that grief with that group, rather than going on for this false praise. And I've seen so many players that are told that they're great when really what they need to do is work hard on some areas. And I've built my career on having very good, honest relationships with players. And I'm always there for them now, wherever they are, even if they're with teams that I'm not involved with now. They're always able to call me, but I'll tell them the truth. I'll tell them, I'll be supportive, but what they need to work on. Because there's fascinating things happen that you wouldn't. Warming players up. When 85,000 people in a stadium, and they're talking to you about that the coach doesn't like them, and that's why they didn't start. These are grown men, grown professional players. So it all starts somewhere, doesn't it? Potential. We all have potential. And I think it's a really interesting word. I believe we all have this. We have a potential box. We have our capacity. I like to think of it as a box. You know, the happy person at the last day of life, they're the one that filled their potential box in. I think the best example of this, I always think of this one because I was around. Who remembers Leighton Hewitt? Tennis player? Yeah, hands up. Yeah, good. Who also remembers Mark Philippoussis? Yep. Okay, so Leighton Hewitt had this, probably, with all respect, in the scheme of things, this potential box. This Philippoussis, remember him? Had that. We've got a couple of tennis players a bit like that at the moment. This guy, kids, if you want to see someone that got the most out of themselves, did this. This guy did this. So I don't know them personally, but I know one would look in the mirror and say, I've got everything out of myself. There'd be one looking in the mirror saying, what if? Every player I've worked with, they've got a story about players that were better than them. But now they're not doing very much. Brian Dean's here. I mean, Dino would know enormous. He's worked extensively with youth players at the highest level. He could tell you huge stories about players that had it all, but by 17, 18, no more. I suppose if we want to keep it real in respect to football context, I think Timmy Cahill had a lot of potential as well. But Timmy Cahill got everything out of himself. Everything out of himself. Timmy Cahill never represented Australia at any level except Socceroos. You know his story, greatest Socceroo ever. Perfect example of what you'd want an athlete to be like. Recently retired, he'll retire happy because he always was planning for that future. A great example for us. And one of the joys of my time to actually work with him. But he was one, everything out of himself. But there's others that are just mediocre. So kids, even us, adults, that's what it is. It's about looking in the mirror and saying, did I do my very, very best? And I think this is a wonderful coach. John Wooden was an amazing basketball coach. And I think this was great. Don't measure yourself by what you have accomplished, but rather by what you should have accomplished with your ability. Coaches, be real. The potential you've got in front of you, a coach's job is to maximize the potential of the people that you're working with. My job is to maximize every bit I can of the potential of the people I'm working with. You, as a player, guys, that's what it's about. Are you doing everything you can to be your very, very best? Is there anything you could do more? Because it's about what have you got. I always get concerned with professional coaches when they start telling me a player is rubbish. Well, for one, you probably signed him. And two, what sort of coach are you? A coach is someone to coach, to make them better. I think we've even lost that. And I like speaking to coaches about that because it's very easy to get into that thing. Oh, they're not very good. Well, make them better. And then if they're not good enough, that's okay. But our job is to always make them better. And I love this quote from John Wooden. He has a lot of very good quotes if you ever see. And an amazing man. If you're a coach and you haven't read up about John Wooden, go and read or watch what he's passed away now. But that's the impact a coach can have. Let's get on to some specifics. We'll have a big question and answer at the end. Early specialisation. A number of years ago, People tried to present to me, certain people, that football was an early specialisation sport. It absolutely is not. I will go as far as saying if your kid plays football, and no other sport, you're actually decreasing their chances of being a good footballer. So what we have now is kids play football, summer football, futsal, but I'm saying give them a break. Let them go out and do other things. Yes, you might do football 2 to 3 days a week and play your game, but the opportunity to do other things is only going to enhance their football. The amount of people now that I see, they write a note for their kids when school cross-country is on because they've got football training. Your kid should win cross-country without even training. They should be embracing that, embracing PE, having that opportunity. And yes, there'll be people thinking and saying, well, that's not what they do in South America. And that's what, and you know Messi, he didn't do that, so I'm going to do what Messi did. Well, let me tell you, let's think about that for a bit. You know, when we look at population samples and they all sort of gather around here, and then you have that. It's called an outlier. That's Messi. Please don't, when someone actually brings that argument up, I realize I can't speak anymore. And because we can't have a conversation, because that is an outlier. The greatest player in the world, he was also, if you know his history, why did he go to Barcelona so early? Because they paid for specific medicines for him because he was very tiny. So he is a freak and an outlier. That's not, what we should be looking at is our great players. What did Timmy Cahill do? Timmy Cahill is a great athlete, can play multiple sports. You know, some of our great cricketers were also great soccer players, football players. You know, the multiple sport athlete. We're a different nation to the South American nations. We're a multi-sport nation. And the thing is, if you don't let your kid taste other sports, well, guess what? You could be robbing them of the opportunity that they could be better at another sport. And does that get back to you? You want a soccer player or a football player rather than an AFL player or a tennis player or a badminton player? Because you feel better if it's a football player? I'm just putting it out there, asking the question, because that's what the facts are. We really need to not do this early specialisation. Look, by the time you're 14, 15, 16, you know, you've got to get a little bit serious. But all the sports are doing it. They're all going for this early specialisation thing. Cricket as well. My son played rep cricket and rep football. And I found myself around April. I remember one year, cricket was finishing, football was starting, maybe March. They had training on the same nights. So this is me. This is only a few years ago. One week, I'm lying to the cricket people. The next week, I'm lying to the football people. Just so he can be on both teams. So every sport wants a bit of themselves, but what we want to do and what Football New South Wales is doing, we're encouraging multi-sport athletes. Trust me on this. Please trust me that if you really, and you kids, if you want to be a footballer, you'll be better off if you do multiple activities. Because I don't know if you know the modern game really well. If you watch it, there is no space for kids or people at the highest level that don't move really well. Technique is absolutely important. Tactics is very important. Psychology is very important. But if you don't have the physiology, you are limited to where you can go. That's the facts. And we as a nation for a number of years were taken off into a direction that really affected us negatively. We used to be a very strong physical nation. And still, people from overseas think Aussies are really good physical athletes. But they're not here. They're thinking of the past. They don't realize that we've changed. We don't have PE at primary schools. We don't have multiple sport athletes. Things have changed. So we are not a natural physical nation anymore. But we can chat about this. Gratitude. I'm really big on this. Happier people, happier players, happier coaches, happier parents are better at what they do. It might sound all warm and fuzzy, but I have these conversations with clubs. I say, how do you expect player X to be really focused on playing when you haven't discussed his contract for the next year? There's 1 month to go of the season. He's got his family at home, and they don't know where they're going to be living, moving, what are they going to be doing. It's not right. So if you're not going to keep them, tell them now, etc. Because it's very difficult to be grateful and angry at the same time. And if we live in this country, we should be very, very grateful. But we've lost that. It's much easier to complain than it is to be thankful. And I think this is something that we can do with our kids, young guys. Think about how lucky you are. You've got a parent that drove you today. You've got parents that actually pay for your boots and pay your registration fees, which is great. But parents, that doesn't give you a right to be a coach. But we are so lucky here. I can't tell you. I think many of us know that. But it's something that we miss. I had the great fortune to work with the Iran national team in the last Asian Cup. Would have been a really good story, but we lost in the semi-final. Would have been nice to win, and they're a fantastic team, fantastic coach. Great opportunity. But the look in these people's eyes when they talked about Australia, because they came here in 2015 for the Asian Cup, that they just loved it. And I thought to myself, we have lost the plot in this country. Because people actually die trying to get here, right? Actually die. They get on a leaky boat and try and get here. And we're here not appreciating it. I was doing a session, first day I was there. And it was interesting because the coach was Portuguese. He spoke beautiful English. The staff was Spanish and Portuguese. They all spoke English. But the squad was Iranian, and they didn't speak much English. And I was doing some work with a player, and as I finished, I picked up the markers that I was there and walked over. And one of the Iranian translators came over to me and goes, "Oh, you've really upset the gear people." I said, "Oh God, what have I done?" They said, "You picked up the markers." That's their job. Where some of us that have been involved in sport in this country realise the gear people, I'm used to picking up the markers because they don't like picking up markers. But these guys were getting $200 a month. And the work they did was incredible. And then I come back here and I just had this, when I see people, you live in Sydney, Australia, oh my God, what a country. And then I come back here and all I hear is, oh, what a country. Kids can't afford their boots. They don't have boots. And that is no way to make us feel bad. It's just for us to be grateful, to be enjoyable that we've got. Like, look at these grounds here. How many synthetic grounds have we got? It's incredible that we've got this now. So gratitude is really important. Sleep. We'll get into some tactics now. Sleep. For me, I used to think sleep, nutrition, and exercise, they were sort of together. Sleep is the foundation. Sleep is the foundation to performance. And adults here, you have to perform in the workplace. We all perform. Okay, if we don't have this right, we don't function right. I can't be stronger on that. And I will even say, if you're having trouble sleeping, please write to me and we can work on that, because you're not alone. The majority, or a huge amount of the population now, particularly adults, has issues with sleep. And we're not even aware of the effect it's having on us. But the research is endless. The relationship between not sleeping and diseases, emotional problems. And our kids, they need a lot of sleep. What time do you go to sleep?
9 a.m. I mean, 9 p.m.
9 p.m. And what time do you have to wake up?
7 a.m.
6:30. Well, in actual fact, good boy, good mum. Okay. We're dictated by a schooling system that is actually negatively impacting our kids. Our kids should never be getting up at 6:30. School should probably start at 10, and we should work it through the afternoon. Research is so strong on this. But what we do is we start them earlier, where the kids need this sleep. They actually need, much more sleep than we probably think. So 10 hours, let them sleep. But we've got schools that start early, right? So it makes it really difficult. I don't know why anyone hasn't changed that, because the other thing about that scenario is a lot of times when crime is committed with young kids, or young kids get in trouble, is this hours between the end of school and when parents get home. But if we shifted it forward, it'd be much smoother. But you guys need your sleep. The most important thing is to have the same sleep time and the same wake time. It's for adults as well. Try and be consistent. Have a good dark room. Try and keep technology outside the room. Have low light. See, this light is unnatural, because we're built to work on the light. Okay, so when the sun went down, biologically we're built, that's the time we start. Hormones start to change to bring us closer to sleep. But we're powering this light into you, TV, phones. And it's good now, the phones, you can switch into a different mode. But all that is impacting us. I think the biggest problem with the phones at night time, what I try and do is an hour before I go to sleep is just cut them out. Because if you sit in bed and you think, okay, I've got the night light on, it's all cool, but then you start searching something, like if you're like me, you search something like, last night was Ashes. Okay, I wanted to see the score in the Ashes. Then I wanted to see what Steve Smith's average was and what he needed to do and where he was. Before you know it, an hour's gone by, and your mind is producing stress hormones that we don't really need. The other thing is, often we have worries, right? Well, thinking about them when you're in bed and sleeping is not going to help. So if you're worried about a game tomorrow, it's not going to help. Worry never solved any problem. Ever. There's a great Mark Twain quote where he said he experienced many difficulties in his life or in his mind, but most of them never actually came true. And that's what anxiety is, looking to the forward, to, running through the what ifs. But if we just cut them out and just live here, we'll be much better off. That's why journaling is good too. What I do, nighttime, everything in my head, just write it down, close the book, go to sleep. So that's important. Have your room cooler. Actually, this is an interesting one too. Often our rooms are too warm. It's about 18 degrees Celsius that we want to sleep in. That's an ideal sleep temperature. But most of us set our air conditioning to 23 or 21 and then have covers on. So often we're a little bit warm, and that can affect us as well. But like I said, I mean that very much. Send me an email, say, Craig, I saw you talking about sleep. I have some issues with sleep. Is there anything that we can do? Because I'm fascinated by it, and particularly with the kids. Because you need it to be a good player. Nutrition. We've gone, every week there's a new diet, isn't there? As an adult, every week. It's very hard to know what to do and what is right. I think with our kids, the most important thing is just to keep it as natural as possible. That we have breakfast. It's a good, wholesome breakfast. And something that the kids like. Where's one of the kids? What do you like for breakfast? Yeah.
Toast.
Yep.
Wheat bix.
Great.
Just simple, basically.
Perfect. Yep, so something basic, then to go on with school. They have their recess, give them, a piece of fruit, sandwich for lunch. Afternoon tea could be fruit. And that's a little bit of a difficulty because what are you going to do with training? If you've got training there. But just keep it simple. Just keep it simple and natural as possible. Where we go astray is when we start getting into these refined, processed type foods. But again, it's beyond this talk to get too specific. Again, if you need any help, you can just contact me directly and I can point you in the right direction. But it is an interesting area, nutrition. Hydration is important. But really what our kids need is water. We don't need to fill them up with sports drinks. Sports drinks are not only high in sugar. Most of the kids in this room are not playing long enough where they need to have that, that impact of sugar in a game or training. It's really bad for your teeth, but they're really well advertised. The marketing's quite positive. Kids need water. The other thing, somewhere along the line, we started thinking that kids need a drink every 5 minutes. That's also not needed. I don't know why that happens. Sometimes I think it's because the coach doesn't know what they're doing and he needs to have a break. But water in the water bottle, that'll suffice. And you know what? Now and again, treat foods are okay. I think if people just know that they're treat foods, it's not going to be the end of the world. I think it was about 10 years ago, I was on the way back from a game v Newcastle and my kids came with me. I was working with Sydney FC and we stopped off at that, halfway home. You know, those servos that are on the side of the road, like near the Tukley turnoff, you know. And my kids, I got them McDonald's. And then the next day in the forum, someone sent it to me saying, "Oh, Dr. Duncan feeds his kids McDonald's." It's like, yeah, why not? Why not? If it's every day, then that's a problem. Yeah. How old? Oh, she's only young. Yeah. Look, yeah, the chocolate milk, I would not go into a protein drink. I would go into chocolate milk's good, and that she could have that. Yep. But as long as she's having good food and that sort of stuff. And do you like chocolate milk? Yeah. So if you like chocolate milk, have chocolate milk. But yes, you don't need supplements. Yeah. But, well, any of those questions. Training. Well, training's obviously very important, guys. From a coach perspective and a player perspective. Training is where the work is done for you to be able to perform on the weekend. And my advice is every training session that you go to, that you're there, so you're going to do your very, very best. That's it. That's your opportunity to enjoy and to put in your very, very best effort. Because there's an old saying that you play like you train, and it's pretty true. There'll be some lazy trainers, but they're few and far between. So training is really important. I think for the coaches out there, I think it's very important, and I know Warren and the guys with the coaching courses, you've got to have structure to your sessions. And as a parent, I want to tell you my worst thing is when training doesn't start on time and it doesn't finish on time. So if you're a coach, remember that. If you're asking parents to get the kid there at 6:15, start training at 6:15. And if it finishes at 7:30, finish it at 7:30. Have the structure, have the plan in place so we actually get that done. I'm not sure what they teach in the coaching courses, but I think for the kids, you know, most professional teams never ever train over an hour and 15. Sometimes I know kids train for 2 hours, but I don't know really why, if that's quality. Okay, you're better off just having that hour 15 of movement, not letting kids stand still, being active and enjoying it, and it's going to be much better off. Like I said, moldable sports is really important. The other thing that's really important is the auxiliary stuff that goes in with football, the injury prevention work. Strength training at any age, but it has to be identified, you know, age-specific type strength training is important. It can't be just the football, all right? There needs to be some other activities that are specific to football that will enhance you as a footballer. Because most of the kids in this age, you know, young ones, they're not going to get injured now. They might have some growth injuries, you know, but, you know, just basic growth injuries or, you know, problems, but they'll grow. What happens is the muscular injuries start to come in 15, 16, 17, and the work hasn't been done at 10, 11, 12, and then we start getting these injuries and we're playing catch up. And there's many a player that has been a very successful junior player that has no career left because they're injury riddled. Simply because they didn't do the work early on. So we're trying to make a difference at Football New South Wales, like introducing things like FIFA 11 Plus as our standardised warm-up, moving through that, and we're trying to develop that much more. And there are some clubs doing some fantastic work. We've had some involvement with a couple of clubs that I'm very proud of what they're doing and have taken that on board, and are just wonderful places for kids to play. They get a really holistic performance program, and it really does make a difference. So I suppose that leads into what's the right club. I think the right club is specific to each individual, each child. I think as a parent, we might have to think about what distance we have to travel and how that's going to impact our entire life. Because I've seen families do this, that Johnny's pretty decent at soccer or football, and he has to go 3 hours a day, 3 hours traveling, but what's the other two siblings doing at home? So I think distance is important to look at. I think I'd like to see what their structure is, who their coaches are, who the technical director is, what their philosophy is. What do they stand for? I would not be choosing a team on where they came in the competition. I would not be choosing a team if they're one of the historically great teams that have been around for many years and have had great success. That wouldn't be the criteria. Definitely if you're, we're very lucky to have such a multicultural nation, and there are teams that have been bred out of a certain culture, and if that's part of your culture and that's where you want to play, that's for me a great reason. I've got no issue with that. But I would be really looking at, don't look where they come on the table. Look at what they're doing in the wider scope. Are they going to enhance your child as a player as well as a person? These are really hard ones, because I'm sure a lot of you, and you might know a lot of people, are thinking, where are they going to play next year? Where are they going to trial? I don't think I've told you anything today that we don't already know. That maybe you haven't heard before. But like with anything with change, I think this is a really good quote, is, when will what we know change what we do? I think it's really time we change. I think it's time we work together as a community, we cooperate and we collaborate to make a difference. And rather than accepting a football community that thinks it's okay to abuse young referees or to abuse young children verbally or in any way, or parents that's behavior on the sideline is not in line with what is right, I truly think we've come to this time in 2019 where enough is enough. And I don't think you'd be here tonight if you didn't agree. But there's no rocket science in what I've told you. I always think, do you know what the odds are of being born? The odds of being born are 1 in 400 trillion. 1 in 400 trillion to actually just be born. The odds of actually being you are a number I can't even work out because it's so big. It's actually, the odds of you being you are virtually 0. So what that tells me is, it doesn't matter what hurdle we have in life. We come from a place where we already won. We got to live. We got to have this opportunity. It's really up to us, and it doesn't matter what age you are, to start and to have some goals or values of what you want to live by and not to waste this. I'm really easy to contact. You can see me anywhere. I'm always good at replying if you contact me. I'm not great on the phone, so that's why there's no phone number, as people in this audience might know. But I'm really good with email. I'm really good with you contacting me on all my social medias at Dr. Craig Duncan. I think that's a good quote. 7 billion people in this world have a harder life than where you're at. So I think we need to make the most of it, and I really do, guys. I really think it's time that we can get back to what do kids play sport for? Fun, thank you. Let's make it a lifelong thing. And those kids in the audience, or those players that have that drive to be, that's what they want. You will know it. You will know it. And kids, it's not about whether you make it or not, that quote that we had there before, it's whether you got the most out of your ability. That's it. But let's open it up for questions and anything. Ask questions, I think, because there might be a lot unsaid, or you might got some idea. Every question is interesting. Yes?
How will multiple sports help our child, and can you give an example?
How will multiple sports help our child, and what examples of that? I think if we just play football, we've only got certain movement directions. Okay, so when we get into that sort of situation where we're only doing that area, the chances of overuse injuries start to increase if we're doing them regularly. By doing multiple activities, okay, we solve these other movement puzzles because there's different changes of direction, there's different movements. So it gives the body a rest, but also psychologically and motor learning wise, gives us that opportunity to solve those puzzles that then might come up into football. And it psychologically, also it gives us a break from football. And there's a lot of sports out there that really have a component that might work similar energy-wise to football, but are just giving you that break. Like I think like touch football is a wonderful game. You know, it gives them an opportunity to change directions, move in different patterns, etc. The other thing is, like, if you've got a young kid, like doing gymnastics, you know, body weight strength work, you know, little athletics where they're learning how to run, learning how to move. All these have really positive benefits. So it's multiple, like physically and psychologically. However, if we're looking purely at performance, I think the best thing you can do for your kid, if we were to sit down and go, okay, we want our kid to be an athlete, okay, and I've just talked about don't do that, but we would start off with gymnastics and some sort of athletics will give us a really good basis to then build from, and then a team sport. Yes?
So if you're talking about that diversity of sports,
yes.
but your football goes for 10 and a half months of the year and probably 4 times a week for training, when do they do those other sports?
That's a really great question. So the question is about popularizing the fact of having multiple sports, but how do you do that when football is now taking over? and it goes for 10 and a half months of the year? I think it's a great question, and I think that we actually have to look at that as a football community, that we are aware that during this time, the kids need a break. The kids, parents, everyone needs a break at the end of an NPL season. But what happens is we roll over and then they've got trials and then they're starting training again before Christmas. My question is, why? Or why can't it just be one day a week so they can play cricket, or they can do baseball, or they can do something else to give them a break? I guarantee you, okay, I haven't done the research, but I guarantee you if I did the research, we would not lose out by doing that. Sometimes we get into the mode of doing things because that's the way it's always been done. And definitely the last decade that I've been involved as a parent, I've seen that, and I just think, I think it becomes really hard. Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think that's something that we need to look at and work hard at changing. That's my belief. Absolutely. So there's a great comment back there about, what about if the clubs incorporated something as a touch footy session or a cricket game or something else? Why not? I think it's just the way we actually think. And I think as Aussies we get really caught into going, oh, so-and-so came from X nation and this is how they did it there, so we've got to do it there. I've always wondered, if I went to a country, I know nothing about AFL, but I'm an Aussie, and say I just coached at the lower levels of AFL, and then I went to a country that was a rising country that didn't really know AFL, but I just said, I'm from Australia and I know AFL, I'd probably be the national team coach. Because I'm telling you, that has happened here. When I've seen people come here and then you do the research about what they've actually done in their home place and how well respected they're there, it'd be very interesting if I told you that outcome, but I won't.
Degrading a child and or favouritism is going on in the child, the children on the team notice it as well. Do we step in as a parent at some point, or do we just have to watch that?
Yeah, the question is, when there is identified favoritism or problems with the coach or abusive nature of the coach to the kids, when does parents step in? I think the process is more to make a report to the club and see what action the club takes. The favoritism one is very interesting. I hear that all the time. I don't know if it always exists, but definitely if there's identified bullying of the kids and abusive behaviour, I think what needs to be done is a report needs to be done to the coach, because we have the obligation of child protection. So if it looks like it's outside the scope of if a teacher was doing it at school, we can't hide behind sport and then start being abusive. Yep. Yes?
Rest days. How many days you would give the kids complete rest when they age between 12 and 16?
Yeah, it's a good question. How many days rest? Yeah, do we need to give our kids between the ages of 12 to 16? Our kids can be active. Yeah, our kids can be active. They don't need a lot of rest. However, what I would say is that if they're only doing football, so it's 7 days a week football training, then there's a bit of a problem with that. But if it's football a few days a week and then they're doing other activities like swimming or basketball down the courts or that sort of stuff, no problem at all. If they want to do that, because a lot of, maybe I'm the oldest here, but like daylight saving, I remember used to go out and play, Dino, you as old as me? We used to go out and play, and Mum used to call you when you came in, so you were doing all this activity. We've just become so structured that, we've lost our way a bit. So, yeah, I don't think there's a problem. I think if it's 7 days a week football, then we've got a problem structured. Yeah. Yes, mate?
Is it like certain natural like strawberry and stuff that are healthy for you that like are good in energy, like before the game or?
Yeah, okay, so there's a good question about strawberries and fruits good before a game. Do you like strawberries?
Like stuff like that, yeah.
What do you like?
I don't know, like strawberry.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, sweet stuff.
And yeah, and fruits. Look, they're okay before a game, but what I say to people is that you try it and then tell me, you work out, did that help you play well or did you have good energy?
I haven't tried it yet, but like would you recommend like eating something before the game or would it be?
Well, tell me what you do. What time do you play?
It depends, like maybe 8, 9 or
Okay.
like later games like 10.
Okay, good. So what do you normally eat before that game?
I might like not eat or like just have an up and go.
Yeah.
I just feel off my dinner last night.
No, that's okay. So if you have the up and go, this year when you've played, have you felt like you've had enough energy?
Not really.
Okay, so you felt a little bit tight. So you might have the up and go and you might, let's try a few strawberries and then see if that helps, or maybe you told me you like toast before, so you could have your up and go and a piece of toast and maybe that's enough for you. Okay, but you need to have it, an hour and a half before your game, because if it's too close you'll be a bit full. But that's always the question I'll ask. Is what you're doing working for you? But if you're feeling a little bit tired, then maybe we just need a little bit more. Okay? So what I want you to do is try a little bit more and then write to me and tell me how it went.
It's a similar question, but it's about water and how
Yep.
much should he be drinking or hydrating. Some days he goes to the game and he's just flat for whatever reason. Is it because of not enough water? Is there not enough water in his from the night before? Or?
Well, look, I mean, you don't want to have too much water like before you go to bed, because then you'll be up all night, and sleep is the most important thing. But waking up and having a glass or two of water is good. I would say maybe he just needs a little bit more than that up and go, and then see if he's getting the good sleep and then what's actually going on. But how old are you?
10.
So you're only young, so it might be just how he is. But if he's saying that he's feeling a bit hungry on the field, I reckon that he might just need a little bit more. And even, like, what's nice is maybe just before he starts his warm-up or an hour, he might have a small piece of banana bread, and that might click him over. Yeah, it's all about trialing, seeing the result, and then working from it. That's how I work. Yeah. Yes?
Does the same apply for half-time then? So, or is there science behind what players should be having at half-time?
Yeah, okay, so the question is, what should a player have at half-time? I would go back to what age they're playing, what age, how long the how long the actual game is. Traditionally we used to have oranges at half-time, and then people go, oh, that's the worst thing you can have is oranges at half-time. It mightn't be ideal to have oranges at half-time, but if you're 6, 7, and 8, oranges at half-time is a great psychological thing, and there could be kids in the team that are playing because the oranges at half-time. So let them have the oranges at half-time. I think most of the kids, they need some water. They obviously need some water because that's a bit of a break. And really, if how long's the game? Are you talking specific?
No, nothing specific.
Yeah. Look, it depends how long the game's actually going. What happens in 45 minutes? They might have a small bit of food, a small drink or something like that with some electrolytes in it. I don't think the kids need that. Some might have a carbohydrate type gel. But kids, if you're playing 30-minute half, 60 minutes, main thing there is to hydrate. And then just see how they're working. If they're dropping down a bit in the second half, maybe they just need something small, but natural, half a little bit of banana or something, and then see how that works. Yes?
The growth mindset,
Yes.
can that be developed or is it kind of almost inbuilt? Or is it the environment that
Yeah.
created?
The question about the growth mindset, can it be developed or is it just inbuilt? Absolutely, it can be developed. I mean, the growth mindset was popularized by a book by Carol Dweck, I think. And and we as parents can help the growth mindset, whatever, the definition of that is. But definitely it's about creating an environment. And I think what we do a bit in our society is we do everything for our kids. Okay, where I think from an early age, like what we're talking here, for them to start to analyze themselves a bit and then see what works, what doesn't work, and take some responsibility. So I think that's the way you can develop it. Sit down with them. I see no reason why a young child can't think about the small future, like what's important to them. What do they, their values. And then that creates that sort of mindset. So we can really create and enhance that. So school does, but definitely parents do. Yeah, so 100% we can develop that. Yes?
What are some of the challenges of, say, 13, 14, 15-year-old girls playing with boys? We don't talk too much about girls and boys sort of playing together.
Yeah.
Because of that in terms of...
So the question is about 13, 14, 15-year-old girls playing with 13, 14, 15-year-old boys. Dino, is that still...
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Okay. So what... Yeah. So what I will say about that, just from my perspective, okay, one thing is girls mature faster than boys. Okay, so at that sort of age, very much that they're more mature. And if the girls, the way we're trying to go with the girls, it's very important that the girls do a form of strength training, that we really build up their athleticism. Playing with the boys, it depends on the girl. It just gets back to that. It depends on the girl. If the girl is playing and not enjoying it, then it's not the right place for them to be. But if the girl is one that can go into it and really loves to play with the boys, then that's absolutely right. But if there's, it gets back to the individual. And I trust what Dino says in that regard. But again, if we're talking an elite girl that wants to play with the boys and really gains from that, and we're working on their athleticism as well, there's no real issue. But if they're just being thrown in there and they're not getting the ball, they're not getting to touch it, they're not going to enjoy it, football. So that's the situation. Yes?
When you get to this NPL level,
yes.
They're training 4 times a week or whatever the case may be, and they're in that 12, 13, 14 years of age. You touched on about the injury that comes along later on. Should those clubs not be conducting and introducing strength and conditioning training into their training?
Okay, so the question is about NPL clubs training 4 times a week, and should they be implementing some form of strength training, injury prevention training? 100% yes. First question is, why are they training 4 times a week?
Sorry, 3 times a week playing games.
Playing games. Okay, so that's, yes, 100% they should. Yep, they should have a holistic program that's implemented, and it can be done. We've shown this at a couple of places. We actually did some video of this at a club that we had some involvement in implementing this program on a very small budget, because one of the beauties of having universities around and overprescribed sports science degrees is there's a lot of students that need to do internships. All it needs is thoughtfulness as far as how to structure it, and you can do it very well. I'm very proud of this club, what they've done over the last couple of years, and I think it's an example for all. And we took some video of it and we might show it. It needs this is when you choose the right club. Good technical director with a growth mindset, wanting to be better, and you know, all this stuff, you've got to leave the ego at the door, and our focus needs to be better of the kids. But 100% has to be part of playing.
Question, where we can find a bit more about this holistic program approach?
You can email me. So question about where can we find more information about a holistic program? It's what I talk about all the time. And so I'm very happy for you to email and we can discuss it further. But we're trying to, I've been very well supported with Peter here at Football New South Wales. Football New South Wales, when I left FFA, I met up with Pete. I wanted to be involved here because Football New South Wales at this level could make a real impact. More, the problem with at FFA, I didn't think I could. I was seeing these kids come in, 15, 16s, under 17s players going, athletically, it needs to start much earlier. When you're getting run off the pitch by Thailand and Vietnam, and it will only get worse, we need to start earlier. And that's what we're about doing here. So Football New South Wales is very much focused on this holistic programming.
If I may add another question, very close to what you just mentioned. Also, you said that a limit how kids far can go is the ability of movement. Yes, you can talk about how the distance can cover, you can talk about agility, speed. Is anything else included in that ability of movement as a limiting factor?
Yeah, well the question is, the ability of movement and what's the limiting factor. Now, as far as, speed is golden in sport. That's the thing that people want to buy. But the beauty of football is that we've got zones on the field which require different physiological requirements. Number one is that yes, we need a really sound aerobic system. But if you're playing on the wide areas, they're the best athletes in the team. Okay? And then if you're in the central areas, you need to be able to move, be fast, be strong, etc. And then front areas often, they need to be fast as well. But all combined, they need to be able to do it repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. So if you break down the game of football, if we do an analysis of the activity, which is the first step in programming for football, you'll see that the components of the fitness that are involved, they're all involved. Strength, because strength is the foundation of speed and power. So without strength, you can't just get fast just playing football. So you need to have some auxiliary training to enhance that ability. So yeah, our kids are not strong enough. Our kids have, even, to be honest, the difference between working with other nations, the Iran national team to the Australian national team, it was like every one of the Iran national team looked like, or didn't look like, were in the size of Mile Jednak. Big, strong, athletic, could move, that sort of stuff, where we're not the athletic nation that we once were. And you think, people might debate this, who, besides our goalkeeper, which player in the Socceroos do you think could play probably in most of the major leagues if he wanted to? Who do you think it is? Matt Leckie. 100% it's Matt Leckie. And why? Because he's fast, he can run all day, he's strong, and he's developed his football in Germany. But that's why, he can play in every league. People used to be very critical of Robbie Cruz. People didn't understand the amount of work a Robbie Cruz did that actually made other things easier for other players. So those are the players but definitely a Matt Leckie, more than any of the other players that we might read more about. Yes?
You drive them, take them on the sideline, you don't say anything on the way home, you listen to music and have fun. Do you ever have that conversation with your child about the game? Or if you do, how do you have a conversation?
Okay, so the question is about, if you're a really good parent, you realize that you're the taxi driver, the bank, and the canteen, and the sleep master, and all this, what I've told you to be. Do you converse about the game? Yes, you do. But you just choose wisely how you talk about it. You ask questions. You open it up. We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we don't need to talk. And parenting, we need to remember that sometimes. That we just listen. Ask some questions. How did you think you went today? What was good? What wasn't good? Doesn't mean you have to respond. You don't want to get into, yeah, you are better than Johnny. And I don't know why Johnny's playing and you should be playing, you're better. Or if the player hasn't played well, let them reflect on it. They know. But it doesn't mean we need to add, but definitely have the conversation. Yeah, I spend a lot of my time talking about sport to my kids. But it might be just like, did you enjoy it? How was it? You know, yeah, simple things like that, but where I'm speaking less and they're speaking more. By the way, I haven't always got it right. Yeah. So, but if we walk away today being self-aware to know when we haven't got it right, that's a major step in the right direction.
In saying all that, how do you then instill a level of confidence, or how do you encourage your child to want to do better, or what are the words you use?
Well, that's a really good question. How do we encourage our child to want to do better or to get the best out of themselves? Well, you go back to that when we talk to the kids about their values, what do they want to achieve? And then you can cycle it around and go, well, okay, so you want to be the best footballer you can be. Do you think you're doing everything to do that? Like obviously, you know, you can tell them when they've played well, when they have played well, and that they did this. Even if they've played in a game, they would have done something well. You can give the positives about that. But I think it gets back to the kid. What are they telling you that they want to do? And are they actually doing it? Giving them the opportunity to do it, to encourage them. Everyone needs a bit of a nudge. Yeah, but it's just doing it in the right way. Is that answer? Yep. Yes?
You touched on some of the behaviour we see on the sidelines from parents, coaches, supporters, that sort of stuff, some of the abusive behaviour.
Yes.
I'd be keen to get your thoughts on how you fix that, because it seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, okay, so the question is, how do we fix abusive behaviour on the sidelines? I actually think that's a really, it's a governance thing. It's a governance from the governing body, but also the club, because it just can't happen. And has anyone ever been around netball? Man, if you're on the netball sideline and you say a word, wow, you're in massive trouble. I was telling Pete today, my daughter was a good netball player and she was at the state championships, and the funniest thing, it wasn't funny at the time, they were in this major game and it was packed. Everyone knows this, the netball people, and they're intense games, and they were playing a big game, and all of a sudden it was really loud. The umpire ran around like this, and I was on the corner because you can be close, and I was with a couple of other dads. I don't even think I said anything, but I might have said like, I don't know what game you're watching. But I said it like this, I don't know what game you're watching. All of a sudden, in front of all these people, blew the whistle, sent me off to another court. And everyone, like, it was like the walk of shame when I had to go back. My daughter was like, oh, you're unbelievable, Dad. And that's me. So netball do it very well. Would you agree? You cannot do anything. So if netball can do it, why can't we do it with football?
Can I just comment on that? In all the years that my boys have been in football, usually the club will make you sign a policy to say you won't say any negative comments. One club is the only club that's ever enforced it.
Yep.
Every time someone spoke out of line, they were spoken to.
Yep.
And it was never a problem. But every other club since then, you sign the paperwork, but it's never ever enforced. So the paperwork's...
Yeah, and that's what I hate that. And that's the thing. We all show that we're doing the right thing, but we're not enforcing it. Words mean nothing. So we need to make a difference. A number of years ago, my son was playing, and my daughter's friend was refereeing. So she was probably 16. She was getting abused from the sideline. I was furious. I tracked down, I went to every official to find out who the president was there, and I went up to him, I said, "What are you going to do about this?" And he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "You've got a 16-year-old girl refereeing being abused by your coach." He went and had a chat. The girl was in tears at the end. Like, that's just, I just do not know how those men can live with themselves and how that club still is allowed to operate. So I think it's a big issue that we need to stamp out, and I think we can only do it by exposing those people. I think they need to be exposed.
I had a conversation only a few weeks ago with a friend of mine with his kid. One of his boys is in my lads team. His other kid plays rugby, and they had a scenario where one of the dads in the rugby team was out of order. They warned him, he didn't stop. They told his kid he couldn't play. So they actually turned up to the game and they said, "Sorry kid, you're not playing today. It's because of your dad." That's the last time he said a word.
Yep. And I think if that needed to be the case to raise that man's self-awareness, and maybe that's the way we've got to do it. And there's that thing like, "God, Dad, what are you doing to me?"
Yeah.
You know? And maybe that's what we need. But it's something that we need to look at. It's obviously there's an appetite, because I'm always in the belief that 99.9% of the population are really good people, and it's just we just get a bit astray with things. And some people do not cope with watching sport. They just become... If you ever see me watch my kids, I always sit alone. Because I just don't... Yeah, I can't listen to what their parents are saying. But anyway, that's another thing.